have shaped the social, political, environmental, and economic fabric of this state, while also enhancing freedom, prosperity, and cultural diversity. And whereas state law, RCW.376, directs the governor and the state agencies to establish government-to-government relations with tribes in order to enhance and formalize working relationships with the tribes through collaboration and consultation. And whereas state law, RCW 28A 320.170, mandates the teaching of tribal history, culture, and government in common schools, which will contribute greatly to improving schools' history, curriculum, and enhance awareness for a better cultural understanding. And whereas Substitute Bill House 1356, prohibiting the inappropriate use of Native American names, symbols, or images as public school mascots, logos, or team names, was signed into law on April 26, 2021, thus removing harmful stereotypes and barriers to racial equality, cultural awareness, and an equitable education. And whereas the state of Washington has designated the Friday immediately following the fourth Tuesday in November as a state legal and school holiday known as Native American Heritage Day. And whereas Washington joins other states across the nation in celebrating Native American Heritage Month, honoring the unique heritage of this continent's first people and reaffirming the commitments to respect each tribe's sovereignty and cultural identity. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim November 23rd as Native American Heritage Month. Signed by Governor Jay Inslee, October 6th of 2023.
Thank you, Director Hamada. I will now turn it to Director Clark to read the proclamation for National School Psychology Week.
Whereas one of the school district's goals is to prepare all students to be college and career ready by collaborating and consulting with staff and families on best practices that will help advance student achievement. And whereas school psychologists have expertise in mental health, learning, and behavior, which helps students succeed academically, behaviorally, emotionally, and socially. And whereas data assessments are collected through evaluations conducted by school psychologists by building rapport and trust with students. And whereas school psychologists help students develop their individual abilities to be self-regulated learners, which include setting individual learning goals, designing a learning process to achieve those specific goals, and assessing the results to determine if the goals were achieved. And whereas National School Psychology Week is an opportunity to raise public awareness of the importance of having psychologists present at each school to help all children and youth become the best students they can be. And whereas this year's theme is Let's Grow Together, which implies hope, growth, resilience, and renewal, and emphasizes the work of school psychologists to help students grow and thrive. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors proclaims November 6 through 10, 2023 as National School Psychology Week and urges all citizens to recognize the importance of school psychologists to guide this generation and provide future generations a better chance for success. And I request a point of personal privilege.
You are requested. Or granted, my bad.
My wife was a school psychologist in this school district. So I am well acquainted with the particular challenges that brings in terms of collaboration with parents and the need to meet with those parents and actually have meaningful conversations. I have found myself driving her to work at 9 o'clock at night to meet with the family in an apartment in a distant area, because that's part of the job, is making sure those personal contacts are made. But more importantly, I want to take a moment to look at why the federal government actually sends money to special education. The reality is the glory of school districts run by the public agencies in each of those local communities is based on the idea that education is fundamental to success in a democracy. Therefore, the recognition must be that the people you serve are not all simply equal, that all of us, of course, inherently carry our own particular barriers and handicaps to overcome. But when you're going to access federal money, that has to be done by testing, and those testing standards are set by the federal government. So your school psychologist, in order to have the title, must in fact be nationally certified. So I suggest to you that they are a critical agent in the success of our mission here in the Kent School District, and I just want to say I appreciate the work they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark. It is now time for 3.0, preliminary communication from the audience. I am told that there's no online comments. Great, I'll make that note. But we do have 2 comments, one from a student and one from the general public. And I'm going to start with our students because we always start with students first. And I'm going to call upon, looks like Riley Kenner to come up to the microphone. And you have 3 minutes for your comment. Thank you for coming.
I just have a quick question about college and the high school. Will CHS classes still be free for students who only require the course for high school credits? That's all.
Thank you so much. Now, we don't usually answer to questions, but someone will get a hold of you. We have your information and be able to give you some information and answers to your question. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. All right, now we have one more comment, and this one is from Christy Padilla. Welcome, Christy. Good to see you.
Always good to see you. President Bento, Vice President Markle, Superintendent Vela, Board of Directors. Tonight, I come to you as a last resort to ask for help. I have brought to the attention this issue to district admin since August 29th. This issue is regarding differently abled students at Covington Elementary and the services they're being provided. Federal law states that students receiving special education receive their education in the least restrictive environment. This includes opportunities for special education students to be provided opportunities with their own disabled peers. Back in August, I learned that at Covington Elementary, that self-contained K-3 students receive their specialist services all at once in a general education kindergarten classroom. This includes kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and third graders. This does not provide these students the opportunity to participate with age-appropriate, non-disabled peers. This is required by law, and I have not been able to get a reasonable solution to this issue. Since I have been asking since August 29th, I implore you to advocate for these students at Covington and ask why this has been happening. The response that our KEA building reps were given by building admin is that KEA does not create the master schedule in a building. We're not asking to create a master schedule in the building. We're asking that differently abled students are provided opportunities to receive services with age-appropriate, non-disabled peers. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. We appreciate you coming. There's an opportunity later. So I'm going to go to 4.0, and we're going to go to the superintendent's report, and I will call on Superintendent Vela to give the superintendent report.
Thank you, President Beno. Tonight I begin my report with a heavy heart for students, families, staff, and community members who may be affected by the violence in Gaza and Israel. Our district is comprised of many diverse cultures and people representing many races, ethnicities, and backgrounds, including our students, staff, and families who have ties to Israel and Gaza. We remain committed to providing safe and welcoming environments for all of our students. It is okay that we may hold different opinions, but the conflict and complex history of Israel and Palestine, but anti-Semitic or Islamophobic speech or acts are not tolerated in our district. There is a list of resources that may be useful to our families as they talk about these events. Please find these resources posted on each school's homepage in the news section. Please know that we are united as a community to support and care for each other during these difficult circumstances. I was invited by our local community organization, Mother Africa, to the Center for African Women by the Executive Director, Risho Sapano, to discuss community concerns regarding the conflict between Gaza and Israel. We value our community organizations that provide support to our families, the long-term and trusted relationships that we have built together. It is by partnering together that we will be able to create successful outcomes for all of our students. This evening, I want to thank everyone who voted in this election. At this time, we are monitoring the election results and will post updates on our website as they become available. In the event the levies do not pass, together with our school board, we will look at all options and evaluate our next steps. Again, thank you to those who supported these levies because we truly view you, our community, as our partners in working together to support our students. As read in the proclamation, I also want to highlight Native American Heritage Month and commend Mr. Richard Summers, our Native American Education Liaison, for his work with our Native American students. I hear there is an upcoming field trip for Lake Young students, and I look forward to seeing the photos of that visit. Recently, I met with Representative Berquist to discuss our enrollment trends, transition kindergarten, the budget issues facing many school districts in our state, among other things. We will continue to collaborate on these topics moving forward. I am so proud of the beautiful diversity in our district, and I'm passionate about language access for all students and families. To that end, I partnered with Representative Orwell to pass the Language Access Bill. To further this goal, I am proud to share that we are moving to a new language service provider that works better with our current Teams platform and is a cost savings measure that offers both the same and additional services and benefits to our families. Our communications team has scheduled trainings for our staff to begin using the new service with the goal of completing the implementation, hopefully by the end of this month. This past week, our central office staff was invited to learn more about Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, during their lunch hour. A special thank you to Ninfa Pozos, KST Spanish translator and interpreter, and Ms. Simone Hamilton, Director of Equity and Strategic Engagement, for hosting the first of many arts and culture pop-up event. Thank you also to Director Clark for joining us last week. There are a few student athletic recognitions I would like to point out, and I'm going to start with our Kent Lake and Kent Ridge girls high school soccer teams advancing to the state tournament this year. We wish them well in the tournament taking place this week. I also want to congratulate Harper Harrelson Margell, who placed third in the 100-meter breaststroke at the West Central District 3 Swimming and Diving Championships. She was the only KSD athlete to place in the top 3. Congratulations to all 4 high school cross-country teams who competed at the West Side Classic Cross Country Championships and for advancing 2 members from each team to the state meet. This week, I also attended the college and career extravaganzas at Kent Lake and Kentwood High Schools. It was inspiring to see students interested in finding out more information about their options after high school. This is a great reminder of how community partnerships with both local colleges and universities and businesses in our area come together in support of our students. I'm looking forward to next week when I will be presenting with Dr. Larry Nyland at our upcoming WASDA conference. We've been asked to share our work and process for our superintendent board governance work in support of student learning. Since this is our only board meeting in November due to the Thanksgiving break, I want to say that I am sincerely thankful for our school board members, our amazing staff, and our incredible students, families, and community partners. I am humbled and inspired every day to continue doing this great work to prepare students for their futures. Please take time to express gratitude to those around you during this season of Thanksgiving. And that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Superintendent Vela, for your report. We are now at 5.0, legislative update. But before we do that, I have to announce that any remaining comment cards for people who want to speak to us at the end of this meeting need to be turned into the blue, I never know where it is, drop box somewhere at the back of the room. I'm going to wait for a second in case anybody needs to dash that direction. I don't see anyone in here running. Students don't want to ask us any questions. Okay, fine, that's good. So then I have to now, well, wait, Ms. T was gonna move? No, no, you're quiet tonight, okay. So then at this time, I'm now going to close the public comments for the evening, and I'm now gonna call on what is wrong with me today? I'm gonna call on Director Hamada to give the legislative update. I don't know. But it's up to you, Director Hamada, thank you.
Thank you, President Benno. This is an interesting evening. The WASDA, Washington Association of School Directors, as I've mentioned before, has priorities that they take to the legislature. We narrowed it down to the ones that we sent off, and then they have a committee, legislative committee, that puts that together. And last time I talked a little bit about that, but they've come up with their 4 priorities that they're going out statewide for the legislative year coming up. And they are to provide for ample, equitable, and stable public education, amplify and equitable fund programs and staff based on student need to close opportunity and achievement gaps, advance supports for career and technical education, maintain the transition to kindergarten program, close regionalization factor gaps between adjacent districts in line with the recommendations from the 2022 K-12 Basic Education Compensation Advisory Committee, and eliminate the differential access of school districts across the state to levy and levy equalization funding. So that's priority number 1. Advance special education. Last year, we really pushed on that in a full session. We made small amounts of headway on that, in a little bit more money in special education and special education transportation, but so much more is needed. So that will be another priority of WASDA. Build safe and healthy schools. Safeguard the social, emotional, and physical safety of students and staff by updating the school construction formula, which really needs it, supporting a simple majority vote for school boards, or school bonds, excuse me, because it's got that 60% threshold, increasing access to the small school modernization grant program, expending resources for relevant and essential staff training, and engaging students and parents in decision-making. And the 4th priority is going to be transport and feed students. We're very close in the state to having 100% of our kids fed. And we do a really good job in this district of it, but they're trying to put that over the top. So we don't have to worry about that anymore because it's just common sense. Kids are gonna learn better if they have something in their stomach and some energy to deal with, and they don't want to have to be ashamed that they can't afford food or have to have a special card or whatever, that they can just go up there and get lunch and everybody's the same. So we're working close toward that, and I'll hopefully be actively involved in all those priorities next year. The other thing is the Standard Board of Education met. That's another kind of part that we fall under too. They had their meeting in Yakima. Washington, and they discussed a whole bunch of things. Something you might want to make note of here, that if you're interested in what the State Board of Education is doing right now, upcoming rules, rules hearing on performance-based pathway. The board, the State Board Standard, will host a public hearing on high school graduation requirement rules for the performance-based graduation pathway option on Tuesday, November 14th at 3:30. You can attend and testify in person if you have some feelings about that, or you can testify online. And I can post I can have them post the link on that somewheres, or you can give email comments. But if you're interested in those pathways to graduation and changing them, the State Board of Education wants to hear from you, and from your thoughts and their thoughts and other professionals, they'll develop a policy on that. So if you want to be part of your education and what goes on with it and goes on in your classrooms and your students, the students can also testify. That's something to look forward to, going and attending. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Director Hamada. We're now going to move on to 6.0, and we're going to look at a fiscal year 2023 year-end financial report. And I'm going to call on Superintendent Vela for introductions on this.
Thank you, President Bennett. I'd like to invite Mr. Ben Rarick, our Associate Superintendent of Finance, to begin our presentation. Mr. Rarick.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Vela. It's my pleasure to present on the year-end financial report for fiscal year 23. So just a reminder that this is like a retrospective look. So we close the fiscal year officially on August 31st, and then submit that report to OSPI on October 25th. But it does not incorporate the results of the levy that is currently failing, or this is purely retrospective in terms of financial activity of last year. Could you click to somebody, there we go, thank you. So we'll do 4 things. Break down some of the financial activity of last year, update on some financial trends, recap the role of the levy, and then look at some next steps. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first 2 slides are provided more for public disclosure. I'm just going to highlight a couple key things. The fund balance is down by about $3 million. We've been able to keep it more or less flat as a function of the availability of ESSER funding. This year that we're in now is the final year that we'll be able to claim ESSER funding. Next slide, please. And this is our statement of revenues and expenditures. Just to note, as sort of a key fact to keep in mind, that we all told across all funds spent $573 million. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next few slides are providing a little bit more of the financial profile of the district. This one talks a little bit about where our money comes from in the Kent School District. So your orange at 71.6% is the state portion. So we have always been and continue to be majority state-funded school district. The gray and blue pieces of the pie are respectively the federal portion and the local levy portion. Okay, right now we're at 16% local funded, but what's going to happen, you'll see in the next few years, is that as ESSER vanishes, necessarily the size of the blue will get larger, right? And the size of the orange will get larger as a percent. So right now we're at 16%. We could be north of 20% when we no longer have COVID aid to claim from. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a depiction of the nature of the expenses. We spent $495 million in the general fund. And one of the things we keep an eye on is what percentage of the total expenditure is attributable to salary and total compensation. And for last year, it was 82.4%. You see the 2 largest cost centers from an object standpoint are certificated salaries and employee benefits. Next slide, please. This is a report on our sort of budget to actual. So we budgeted, how did financial activity relate to what we projected? And so on the left, you see that we collected 99.2% of the revenue that we anticipated receiving, and we spent 97.3% of the expenditures that we budgeted for. So those are pretty typical across time, and and not surprising. Next slide, please. This is our status update on ESSER. So we are currently in the final year of ESSER claims. This reports on the end of last year. So this reflects that as of year-end close, we had about $31 million remaining to claim in this year. Recall, we've been claiming about $30 million each year. We anticipate actually that we'll probably finish off that claim well before the end of this school year. So sometime around the middle of the school year, we think we'll be done with ESSER. And then again, this will be the last year that we have that funding available. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into some financial trends and some staffing graphs over time, as well as some enrollment. Next slide. This is the depiction. Take a minute with this. I realize there's a lot of data on the page here, but you've seen this graph before, and it's an important graph in that it shows the history of the student enrollment in the Kent School District, and then it color codes the type of enrollment, okay? So your blue bar is your general basic ed enrollment. Your red bar is students enrolled in ALE programs like Kent Virtual Academy would be an example. Your green bar is students that are enrolled in Running Start programs. And finally, your purple bar are students that are enrolled in our iGrad program, okay? So you can see two things. First of all, that we experienced an enrollment decline starting in 18-19. So our enrollment decline actually started before COVID. Then it accelerated immediately after COVID, okay? Stayed down. Once we returned to bricks and mortar instruction, like in-person instruction, we had a small, modest bounce back, but notice which colors bounced back. So Running Start grew quite a bit, but again, our financial relationship with Running Start students is different, right? Because we're essentially forwarding that money to the community college. For all intents and purposes, they are enrollees of the community college. But our actual blue bar continues to be among the lowest levels that it has been in recent recorded Kent School District history. And that's a very important figure to keep track of, because it is enrollment that drives our primary revenue source. You'll recall the slide earlier showing the parts of the pie and which source of revenue is the greatest source of revenue. It's the state, right? And the state revenue is derived by what? Enrollment, right? So as that enrollment declines, so too does our revenue. Next slide, please. This provides a little bit of a more detailed look at how we're doing this year in enrollment. So you see September, October, and we were able to get November in there. And the blue bar reflects where we were month by month last year, and the orange bar reflects where we are this year. So we are down every month, but you'll notice that we got further down in October. So the gap widened. So we came out of the first week of school feeling pretty good, that where we were pretty tight to last year. We actually started to develop a bit of a gap now, and we're further down now than we were at the beginning of the school year. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to go through some graphing slides that are also historical in nature. And you've got some graphs going in opposite directions. I showed you an enrollment slide showing we're at among the lowest levels of enrollment that we've ever had. Now I'm going to show you some staffing slides showing that we are among the highest levels of staffing that we've had. So the first graph shows total staffing FTE, okay? And this is going back to 2013 and reflects year-end figures for last year, 2,973.8 FTE total. And then the next slide pulls out just certificated staff, and it's a similar shape to the previous slide. At year-end, 1,858.2. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is another graph that I'd like to take a little bit longer to digest. So we have, I've delivered this presentation to you every year that I've been in the district. And for the last 3 years, we've had the same concluding thought which is that the existence of COVID ESSER funding was a bit of a mixed blessing in the sense that it helped school districts across the state through the COVID pandemic. But in some sense, it also delayed a fiscal cliff that would have originally materialized in the pandemic, but now is materializing much later. So I have tried in each one of these presentations to quantify that gap for you, and I'm doing that again this year, today, by looking at the far right of these two bar graphs, okay? In the blue graph, you see the total amount that we reported to have spent in the general fund. That number is $495 million, okay? On the right, you're showing a dark orange bar, which represents all of our regular revenue other than ESSER, okay? All of our regular revenue, kind of repeatable revenue, other than ESSER. And then at the top, you see sort of a shaded orange, and that represents the amount of ESSER money we claimed last year, okay? And so based on where we ended last year, we have a gap of $31.5 million between our repeatable revenue sources and our ongoing expenses. Is that clear to the board members, and do you have any question about that? Because it's probably the most important conclusion of the presentation. Okay, so that reflects activity from last school year, okay? Now we're gonna talk a little bit about what's happening this school year. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're growing in the current school year. So one of the things we keep an eye on is payrolls, total payrolls, right? So we were up 11.7% in our September payroll of this year compared to our September payroll of last year, okay, an apples to apples comparison. So this is getting to the point that we have a deficit as defined at the end of last year, but that is growing in this year. Next slide, please. Okay. Next slide. So when we prepared this presentation, we did not know what the results of the levy would be. It is looking at this point like neither the EP&O or the capital tech levy are likely to pass, which is unfortunate. What this illustrates for you in the top chart is the amount of money that is associated with each of those measures for each calendar year going forward. So in calendar year 2024, which is the calendar year we're just about to enter, the only financial impact to the district in that year is the $29.2 million on the capital side, okay? The real impacts start in calendar year 25, which is half of the 24-25 school year, okay? And were we not to successfully pass an EP&O on a second effort, we would be looking at a lost revenue of $79 million to the school district. So this is not an insignificant amount of the district's budget, given that we spent $495 million last year. Gives you a sense of the magnitude of what we were dealing with. So we receive updates on the results of this levy at 4 o'clock every day. I understand we got another update today and it inched a little bit ahead, but we're still at least a couple percentage points south of 50% at this point. And history indicates that that might be a little more than we might expect from historical returns. I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope that I'm wrong. Any questions about that?
Can you go back?
Yeah.
So ultimately, for the capital levy, that doesn't look like we're a lot of percent down for that. So basically what that means, with the not passing of the capital levy, we miss that $29 million.
That is correct.
We
That is
can't
correct.
get that back.
That is correct.
So by that not passing, we lose $29 million of our
Correct.
budget for next school. It would have been next school year's.
That is correct.
Budget. So we lose that. And so everything else we see after calendar year 24 is if both don't pass, then for calendar year 25 we miss out on $140 million. And calendar year 26, we miss out on 145 million.
Yes.
If both don't pass.
Correct. And just to clarify, the 29.2 is a sunk situation at this point. If there's no redos on the 29.2 million, right? The 140 million, the combined effects of the EP&O and the capital. Under the law, the district would receive one more opportunity to go to the voters between now and the beginning of calendar year 2025. There are some rumors in the community that we have more than that. That is incorrect. We have one more opportunity. There are different slots to choose from, but we have one opportunity to go to the voters.
I think there's a perception that we can run it in February, run it in April, run it in August, and keep running it till we pass it, but that's not how it goes.
The nuance is we could choose one of those, but we can't choose multiple of them. We get one chance, we have the option of when to do it, okay? And there was some question about this, and we vetted it with several lawyers, and we're certain of the answer. So it is not a question of how many times we get to run it before calendar year 2025, it's a question of when we run it, okay? If we go back to the voters, regardless of the slot that we go back to, and it fails, then what you see listed under calendar year 2025 is, at that point, uncollectible for that calendar year. We would not get to go out for a third opportunity, okay? Any other questions? I appreciate the clarifying question on that.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at these numbers correctly. Going back to, the pie chart.
Yep.
Okay.
Which slide is that?
So rough numbers we're looking at here, $500 million total expenditures.
Correct.
Right?
On the general fund side, yep.
Yep. So so certified salaries, classified salaries, employee benefits is 82.4% of those.
Correct.
Everything else, so supplies, purchased services, could you give me a purchase service
Contracts, our running start flow-through is a purchase service, for example. But any contract we have with an organization is a purchase service.
Tech?
Sure, we have a service provider that's helping us with special education services, for example. That is a contract. You know, if we have health services, social emotional health services provider, if we have a software license for Canvas, if we, you know.
So like our mental health services are there too, like
Yes.
our Hazel Health and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then travel and I'm guessing capital outlays in there too. If we add up
Yes.
all of those, that equals 87.17 million. Which is 17.6%.
Yeah, what was
About
the,
87.17 million.
adding which? I'm sorry, the ones you called?
Everything other than salaries,
Yes,
benefits.
okay.
Everything else.
Yeah, I wasn't adding along with you, but I'll stipulate that that's
Okay,
close.
sure. That's what I was doing with my
Yes.
phone here, I was promising I'm not texting my kids. And then go forward with this 87.17 million in mind with its everything other than salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go forward, please? Sorry, where we were looking at
To the end, I think, where we were, yeah, all the way to the end. That one right there. There you go.
That's what I'm looking at. Like, those are the big buckets, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think the takeaway is, the magnitude of what we're facing with a lost EP&O is, first of all, extremely rare in the state. So it's not faced very often. But when it is faced, it is, extremely material to the staffing and cost structure of a school district. Not just marginally material, it's extremely material.
So meaning for our public and for people, there's a lot of people here. So what does that mean? Like,
So
what would be the material that we lose? I guess that's my direct question.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I'm trying to think of a simple way of explaining that, because it's a,
What? There's not an easy solution? Weird.
I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm going to make a sweeping generalization here, and there might be a couple of small exceptions to it, but in the main, it's true. pretty much every employee in the Kent School District, their compensation package in one way, shape, or form is subsidized by the local levy. They may not realize it, but it is. So if we said, okay, we don't have a local levy, we just run the state program of basic education, that impacts both the program that you can offer, the class sizes that you can offer, the support services you can offer, the supplemental services you can offer, but it also impacts the compensation that you can offer the people who are running these programs. It impacts both sides of things. There are a couple rare exceptions to that, but as a general organizing thought, it is correct. And so I hope that that's responsive to your question.
Yes, thank you.
So would it be fair to say, Mr. Eric, that the state model that they're putting out for budgeting is not meeting the needs of our everyday school districts, so we depend heavily on our levies?
That's absolutely true.
And if we don't pass those levies, it becomes, unfortunately, to districts that have to start to sacrifice where they're going to put their priorities to, and they don't have, and even if they want to give all these special things, it's needed in these special communities, especially in diverse communities, that it plays into how they can deliver their product. And it becomes very difficult for anybody to make those choices.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the other factual statement I can make is that it's quite rare. It's fairly rare for school districts to fail M&O levies once. It's extremely rare for them to fail it twice. And there's examples to look at as to what happens to school districts when they fail an M&O twice. So we don't really have to wonder about it. The most famous case is the Seattle School District in the late 1970s. It pretty much shut down the school district. 1978, I believe, was the first sort of famous double levy failure in the state. I believe the Battleground School District went through it at one point in the early 2000s. And I believe there's one up north.
Edmonds.
I thought it was Marysville.
Yeah, I think it was Marysville. You're correct.
But part of what we intend to do is a way of communicating to the public is we don't need to speculate about the impacts. We've got 3 examples. You can see what happened to these districts. It's not a subtle thing. And it's difficult to, frankly, overestimate the impact because it affects pretty much every staff person in every program.
And where levies and bonds fail in districts, property values go down, and it's less desirable to live in those districts. Is that not true? So everybody's net worth, even renters' net worth, because their ability to have good apartments, temporary housing, and everybody's net worth is affected by what happens in our schools. Thank you.
I'm assuming there's more. We're not ending on that note, right?
I was just trying to answer your questions.
Okay.
So, final slide.
Oh,
Okay. So here's where we are as a result of year-end close for fiscal year '23. As we are now, because we have the $30 million a year of claim on ESSER, we're fine from a fund balance perspective right now. We continue to prop that up with the backfill of the ESSER claim. And so, but as you've been hearing these briefings over the years about the coming ESSER cliff, this now, to be clear, the 24-25 budget cycle that we're about to enter is the first year where the district is essentially forced to plan for the end of that money. And so the graph that I gave you was intended to quantify that amount at the end of next year. And then staff are closely monitoring expenses in the year to see to what extent that gets bigger in the year that we're in. We had some decent sized contracts where the first year of implementation is the year we're in now. So we're sort of assessing the true impact of that in our current year, and that will add to that gap. And so the kind of the maintenance of the fund balance has been a function solely of the existence of the ESSER funding. And so there is a provision in the superintendent's contract where it says that he will be evaluated in part on his informing the board of fiscal challenges coming, and so this presentation is officially doing that again this year as it did last. And so if you have any additional questions about that, you could either ask them now or afterwards in a more intimate setting. But that completes my presentation.
I do have one question, and it's not trying to be like a, got you question, but monitor the monthly payroll, can we go to that slide?
Yep.
I'm just curious. One more, that one.
Mm-hmm.
So we've known that this fiscal cliff has been coming,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I'm curious, and you probably don't know off the top of your head, like what services or whatever ESSER we're paying for, but why on earth, if we know we're on a fiscal cliff, would we hire more people and increase payroll if we knew a fiscal cliff was coming? So I'm very concerned about this 11.74% slide. Like, are those all positions that will end after this year? Or are they like temporary positions? Or like, I'm just really curious because that seems very.
Do you have a speculation as to why that might be?
I will-
Like, what are the largest increases of our expenditures
Well,
in
the
the
staffing.
schools?
So
Right.
that
And how is that staffing determined? It's contractual.
Yes.
It's contractual, right? So much of the largest increases that we're experiencing are due to two things, okay? One is we're implementing the contract with Fidelity. So if we have caseload increases or if we negotiate a contract, we are bound to implement that, right? So I'm trying to get you a feeling for the fact these are not sort of discretionary onesie-twosie decisions that are being made. These are the effects of complying with our contracts that are in force.
Okay, I guess I need.
I'll give you an example,
Okay,
two of them.
thank you.
Okay? So, and this is part of why September might actually be a little higher than what we see in October. You had two big contracts this year that you settled in the summer, in the fall. Do you remember which they were?
I need to buy a vowel.
APA
Right?
Oh,
and the paraeducators.
Right?
KPA and but you
There was
can't tell me
another
that the paraeducators and KPA raised salaries 11.74%, or is this what this is telling me?
So you had some retroactive that hits in September because those, I think they settled in September, right? So I don't expect that October is going to be 11%, right? But the retroactive effects of that will actually show up in a September. So you'll kind of have a doubling up in September, when you won't necessarily see in October. But what you're seeing essentially here is that both for the effects of staffing and the effects of salary, we are growing beyond what the state allocates to us. That would be a fact.
Did we add any new positions? Or like, I find it really hard to believe that that's just two contracts being implemented.
That's not the only factor.
got it.
So we've got, I mean, now we're sort of, I'm going to stay high level at this point.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
asked
because
if we.
because we don't have the exact, that's what I was saying.
You asked if we added staff.
Yeah.
There were instances where we added staff. We opened a new school, right?
See, yes.
We added counselors.
Yeah.
You know, our teaching numbers are at their highest level right now. We've had growth in our MLE program. We've had growth in our inclusive education program. So none of these programs have been going down,
Okay.
okay?
Do my colleagues have any other questions about this budget presentation?
I'm just going to throw out some illustrations. I was in the Edmonds School District, and I think it was 1976, and they double failed a levy. So obviously, staffing was immediately affected at a rate of about 15% of total staff. But I have never forgotten the day the counselor came into my classroom the next year and asked me to take on the 44th kid in that classroom. It is an impact on education that is a setback. And the Highline School District went through a double levy failure, and I think it was 77, but in that range. And both districts agreed, in summary, it takes 10 years to recover from that particular experience. And there's no escaping that.
Other comments from my colleagues? Questions for my, sorry, I said questions for my colleagues? Seeing none,
I'm good.
we can move forward.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Point of privilege, President Beno.
Yes, Director Hamada.
I would like to just thank personally Director Rarick for all the hard work of getting these finances in order. Thank you, and also the hard work that he's done on other issues. Thank you very much, Director Rarick. It's a greatly appreciated.
All right, let's move forward in our agenda to 7.0, discussion and approval. And we are going to go to 7.01, resolution number 1659, certification of the excess property tax levies for calendar year 2024, as amended.
I move to approve amended agenda item 701 to include the modifications referenced by the superintendent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Wait time. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of adopting 7.01, Resolution 1659, certification of excess property tax levies for calendar year 2024 as amended. If you're in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. None, no abstention, motion carries. Let's continue. We're going to go to 8.0, consent agenda. Do any board members have any items they would like to pull from the consent agenda to discuss? I want to pull 8.13,
815.
815. Any other items? Seeing, oh,
Nope.
nope. Director Amata?
I don't think so. No, thank you.
All right, seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt 8.01 through 8.16, minus 813 and 815.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We adopt consent agenda 8.1 through 8.16, minus 8.13 and 8.15. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. None, and no abstention. Motion carries. We'll start with 8.13, the remodel of District Office A200 Conference Room. And can I have I guess I pulled it so I can move, but I don't think I can move. Okay.
I'll move 8.3, remodel of district office and a 200 conference room. I need my glasses.
I think she intended to say 8.13.
1-3,
Yes,
correct.
excuse me.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? I mean, I pulled it, so I obviously have discussion, but does anybody else have any discussion before I discuss it?
Go for it.
Okay, so here's my question, and I guess maybe, again, it's like procedural. So this is on the agenda now, but when I walked into the room last month, the construction and stuff already started. So I guess I'm kind of curious about kind of like the process and why this is here now. If it's already done, then like, all right, why are we voting on it? It's already done. So I'm just kind of curious procedurally, like why this is here now instead of before.
Absolutely, no, great question. I'd like to invite Dr. Behringer to the podium to answer your question.
Thank you, President Beno, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. Couple things. First of all, just to kind of get context for this particular remodel, last year we were running into problems where we didn't have enough space on central office or central administrative campus here for teams and groups to have meetings. We'd taken several different conference spaces away over the last few years, and so there was a need to provide some additional space. This is one of several spaces on campus that we started to retrofit and move things out of to be able to bring back conference spaces for teams and work to be able to be done up here on district campus. This particular project, last year, one of Superintendent Vella's many things that he did was to open up the superintendent's wing to more of our leaders here at central office to be able to have access to the conference room that is currently in that space, to be able to access. And we realized that that space was not nearly enough. And so as we were doing a needs assessment around the campus, with the current spaces that we had and talking to various team members, we've realized that we didn't have enough spaces at all. And so we started looking at where we could create those spaces. This was one of, again, like I said, several spaces. To answer your question is, we are obligated to bring to the board anything over $25,000. Once we started this project and we got into the project, we thought it was going to be less than $25,000. This particular part of the project was going to be less than $25,000. So we didn't need to bring it to the board. Fortunately, once we started the project and we got into things that we didn't realize that were going to be in those spaces, we realized that we were going to be over the $25,000 and we needed to come to the board. And so that's why you see this on the board agenda this evening, is because it did go over $25,000, and that's why we're here tonight with this on the agenda.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it. But I'm also curious, as I look at this item, I don't see plans, I don't see descriptions. Like, I see below, like whoever is doing the construction needs to have like insurance or whatever, but there's no plans really. I don't even see a description. I think the only description I see is
There is a description
model
in there.
superintendent wing.
No, there's a description in there of all the things that are being done. It's in a paragraph. I believe it's on like the third page.
Yeah, keep going.
It's right at the top of the third page, right there. Scope of work. If there are specific questions, I've got Executive Director Dave Buzzer here who can answer specific questions, but that's the scope of work.
Dr. Behringer, just for my clarification, you said it was roughly around 24,000. This total is 37,654.20. Is that on top of the 24,000? Okay.
The 25,000 is the threshold to bring to the board.
Okay.
And so initially, we thought we were going to be right up to that 25,000. No, 37.2 is the total, inclusive of the 25. So it's an additional 12.2 on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there plans or anything? Like, now that I see the scope of work, I don't know how you missed that. But like, are there plans or anything related to this or no?
Yeah, there are plans.
Okay. So, what if we vote no on this tonight? What happens to that space?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Because the construction's already started, so I feel like it's moot. So like, if it's already started, if we say no, what happens? Like, it's just gonna be hanging out there in dust and studs? Is that what's gonna happen?
Well, I believe Superintendent Vella has brought this to your attention last spring for the need, and has been kind of, every now and then giving you a little update. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say no, and we could just leave it sitting there, stop the work, pay them for what they've done. I don't know if that's good business or.
I don't think it's good business, but I feel like we're caught like, well, we already started this and now we're getting your approval. So I feel like it's just like, well, if we don't approve it, we're jerks. But then here's this extra expense that we just looked at our abysmal budget coming up and we're like, well, let's do some more on this. So I just feel like I'm in a weird, tough position because of this. Because I feel like that ultimately, like, we're responsible for the budget. And now it's like, here's this extra expense that, because it was going to be under 25,000, we were going to have to bring it to us. But now that it is, we have to bring it toward it. So I don't know. I just feel really weird about this.
See if I can help a little bit with that. Just as a comparison, when we've come to you for updates on jobs that are currently down, so there's things we encounter behind walls once we get into asbestos, those types, so those change orders, that's a similar one, right? So that's similar to this. We don't know once we start getting into some of the walls. But another way to answer your question is we do $25,000 worth of work. That's no tables, no chairs. I mean, I'm just trying to answer the question. The reason we're coming back is because sometimes these jobs, when you start to open walls up, that's what you see. So the change order is a comparison.
Got it.
The other piece to kind of go further into where and how we want to use the space, as you saw, we've been growing. This board, in terms of the work that we need to do, has needed space, and we've been pretty tight in there. In fact, we've had to come in remotely, challenges and those kinds of things. So the space is needed. The biggest need is another larger meeting space here in our district, and that's the biggest use of that, not just for board meetings. So it's not the superintendent's conference room any longer. It is a space to be able to conduct larger meetings. One other piece, we did this in, I believe, Dr. Behringer Rainier room was the conference room.
Yeah, the Rainier room was converted into a locked storage for HR files.
Right, and so we lost that space, just as an example. Similarly, we did the same kind of process. We needed more room for actually confidential files that are locked, so that was a need. So just sharing with you that that was taken, and therefore now we need to do other things with the current space we have, with the resources we have.
Got it. I have one more question, and then other folks, sorry, I don't want to feel like I'm dominating. But we also, because we moved students to Candy Ridge, had a bunch of portables around. Was that taken into consideration of using portable space for office space instead of a construction? Or would have that cost more? Did we look into those types of things?
It definitely would have cost more. I think we shared with you just to move a portable is in the $75,000 to $95,000 range. We definitely would have come to you for that. We would not, because that's not practical to bring a portable that actually has a life to it and would not be a good move.
Okay. My colleagues, other questions?
I brought this up in our 2x2, like, I don't know, in finance, especially seeing people both on business and personal, cost overruns are expected. If we thought that we're gonna be up to $25,000, there's absolutely no way that you're not gonna have cost overruns that bring you over. So this should have been brought to our attention. I'm going to vote for it today because it seems silly to leave space that is unusable now. And honestly, it's a waste of what we've done so far, and we have to get it done. But I just hope that this is a live and learn. We tell people this a lot with, when you're going to get financing for doing a home equity loan, for doing a remodel. Don't just get as much as you need, because guess what? You're going to be in the middle of construction and you need more. And so make sure you have enough for what happens in the cost overruns. And I think anybody prudent in kind of these things, this should have been done before. So, but yes, I think you probably would have done this differently.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just have a question. When we bid things, we're kind of seeing a pattern, and I'm not saying it's not needed where the cost overrun occurs. And a lot of these bids are pretty, they're trying to get the lowest bid. But I'm wondering if in government contracts, like Director Margell was saying, I mean, when I did my remodel on my 2 bathrooms in my house, I knew it was going to cost X amount, but I knew it was going to cost more. So I made sure I had that set aside. But when they actually come in and do a job, do they ever say, if P and Q occurs, we've set aside this much money? So, I mean, when you go back to the public and it looks like we keep coming back to the well, it doesn't look too great. We want to kind of have it clean, and that's what it's going to cost. I mean, there's some things you just can't see, but I'm wondering if there's a better way to do that so we could have some contingency fund or something built in. I don't know. Maybe government contracts you can't do that with, but.
And there are times we do the contingency, as Mr. Buzzard has shared with us before. So
But this type of thing on a smaller amount, we
Yeah,
don't?
a smaller amount, yeah, in this
So,
case.
okay, right. All right.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll put this to a vote. All those in favor of adopting 8.13 remodel district office A200 conference room, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. None. Abstentions, saying none. But I mean, you've heard what the board had to say, so I'm hoping you take that into consideration. So that's my point of privilege, I guess. 8.15, gifts, donations, and/or memorials. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve 8.15 gifts, donations, and memorial acceptance.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I just want to acknowledge some folks that have truly done some extraordinary things in trying to support their kids in their school. Glen Ridge Elementary, their parent-teacher organization raised $6,400 to support field trip transportation. Matson Middle School, their PTA raised $600 to support field trip expenses. And Kent Lake High School was the recipient of a major-sized TV with flat screen display case for Kent Lake's photography room from Indigo State.
Cool.
So it's great, and I appreciate the efforts of these people.
Thank you, Director Clark. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of adopting 8.15, gifts, donations, and memorials acceptance, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. There's none. No abstention. Motion carries. Which now leads us to somewhere. I don't know. I'm lost. 9.0 informational. We don't need to do anything with that. That's here for our information. Unless the board would like to bring something up. I don't see anybody racing to speak, so I'm going to go to 10.0, final communication. We have no more final communication for the audience, which takes us to 10.02, board director reports and discussions. And I'm going to start with Director Clark for your board report.
So I had the opportunity to watch some football games during the season, and I just want to compliment the Kent Meridian High School football staff. As a former high school football coach, I'm well acquainted with the fact in a competitive league, it is a numbers game. It takes 100 student athletes and 20 seniors just to have a shot at having a winning record. And the KM program was bereft of their head coach from last year, so it was a new staff. And I know on the first day of turnout, they only had 37 kids on the field. So the point that I'm making is KM was put in a particularly difficult situation. Their feeder school was in fact removed by district boundaries as being a significant distance away from KM High School. The result was that cutback in activity buses dramatically reduced the number of kids in middle school being able to begin to develop their skills, and that clearly cut into what the KM head coach was facing when he took the field. But they did an absolutely amazing job with what they had, and hats off to them. And that's all I want to report on right now.
Thank you, Director Clark. Director Hamada.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. They, got put out there with the end, but they had some good games that they won. Yeah, so I'll be anxious to see what they come up with next season, I think something like that kind of just grows, and we want to try to get these programs built and transportation as much as we can, but again, it costs dollars to do that. I'm going to start off with kind of a sad thing, but not sad, because it was a beautiful memorial that I attended at Mill Creek Memorial. Candy Hess, a employee down at Mill Creek, passed away, and that was very nice. I've gone to a couple of them this year, of employees, and even a couple students that unfortunately met untimely death. But their memorial service and the effect they have on the community is overwhelming. The lives they touch as teachers in that profession is pretty amazing. And here's a good note. A gentleman that worked at Meridian Elementary and rose to the position of head custodian, Mr. Byer, retired after 19 years. That's quite a long time in a school district, so I hope he's enjoying his fishing and whatever he's doing. The Kent Laboratory experience of the university sampler is kind of interesting, where they have a new program where through their CTE that the kids are getting, the professors are getting more interaction for professors with teachers in that program to kind of go over some of the things to help them in some of that. But one of the things that I thought was pretty cool about it, because a lot of kids don't actually get the opportunity to be in a classroom at a college until they go there. You know, sometimes maybe they'll meet on the weekends or something, but this gives them the opportunity for college professors to come in and teach one time at Kent Laboratory, and that also that they can go up to UWT and they can go in and observe all day long. So that's a wonderful program that we're starting there. We're setting up a really good thing. This is in the superintendent's report, that we're restoring and reclaiming and revitalizing all our libraries. They have a library team, and if we can do that, I think that's going to be great too. We've hired 125 new paraeducators. We certainly need to do more, and we need to do more, encourage them that. We did take a big step forward and signed a good contract that gave them competitive wages. I wish we could have done more. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we took 80 high school students to an Osprey camp, high school students from across the board, October 21st, where we trained them to be mentors with our fifth graders, and that's how we develop mentors and tutors and teachers and leaders. So I was glad we made the investment in that. Let's see, I'm looking forward to going to, and I have tickets. If you haven't been to the Kent Ridge Plays, they are absolutely amazing. So they're doing Hunchback from that one tonight. That one, and I'm excited to see that. And they always, it's unbelievable. I've been privileged enough to go to some plays in New York and abroad, but I'll tell you, Kent Ridge and Kent Lake and some of these schools in Kentwood I've been to, they're not too shabby. They're pretty darn good. And that's cool. And of course, really wonderful that Kent Lake High School soccer girls qualified for the first state round, and that's pretty good. And those are some of the highlights. One of the things I thought was interesting in the survey that we put out, we do kind of like a wellness survey or kind of support survey to see where our kids are at, to see what, kind of feed into the multi-tiered support. But I found this very interesting. In this day and age, they ask all our kids that were in this, and the biggest amount that came back of who was your biggest supporter? And the top three categories, and there was coaches, teachers, siblings, all kind of things, but the top three categories of who our kids felt overall was their best supporter was, number one was mom, number two was dad, and number three was friends. So what we do outside of the homes is extremely important too. And we ask our kids if they felt in our high school, they believed that an adult at the school believed in them, if they had one. We had 71% of our kids answer that survey that said they had one person that supported their success and an adult in our schools. We need to get that to 100%. But those are some interesting statistics that came back to that. The bus driver that did a wonderful job when the bus caught on fire in the Cedar Valley, it didn't catch on fire actually. An overload of some kind of a heater, and it was steam or something, the same kind of thing. They thought it was on fire. They got the kids out, and only one child or one student had a small degree burn, but they got that taken care of right away. And the helper there, the driver's Jamie Rito, and then a helper, I don't know how the data processor got involved, but it must have been close around, and she jumped in and got those kids off the bus. So we're keeping our kids safe, and we're keeping that's extremely important. We have 2 runners in cross-country from Kentwood and 2 from Kent Ridge who advanced to state. And so lots of things going on. So that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Hamada. Vice President Margell, your report, please.
Well, mine's going to be nice and short because Hamada, you were able to do almost everything I was talking about. So I think we're on the same wavelength for a lot of these. I did want to celebrate our girls' state soccer, Kent Ridge, Kent Lake, and a couple swimmers going to state.
One we might know.
And especially in a district without a pool. But just had to put it in at least once. But we are very proud of, we have many different sports. We're just right here trying to write notes of which school was this, which school was this. And I think there's just a lot of really fun things going on. And it is really hard tonight, especially, when we're talking about budget numbers and they're devastating. Like enough to make, like, you catch your, tears kind of welling up, right? Like these are devastating numbers we're looking at. And what it does help is think about, like, our kids are still having a really good time and they're doing good work. And I am thankful for our students every single day. Thank you for bringing the culture that you do to our schools. Thank you for participating and bringing your true self, because we are all better people for having you in our district. I'm also excited. I believe there is a play, and I'm thinking it's Kentwood, the play where something goes wrong. Does that sound right?
I think it's Kentwood.
Kentwood, I think that's happening here. I'm looking forward to that one too. And Hunchback of Notre Dame, I'm looking forward to going to that one too. And there's just so much, it's hard to keep up with everything. So it's not a bad problem to have. So that concludes mine tonight. And I think I might have even hit my 3 minutes or less.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Vice President Margell. And I will go on to my report. But first thing, I guess it's kind of, I went to the budget exit conference with some folks from our district. It was on Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. And there's some findings that the state auditors found that I'm assuming will be talked about at some upcoming board meeting that I think need to be addressed. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head, but for my board colleagues who weren't there, I think it's important to kind of know that that was something that there was some findings that they found. And the report's online and somewhere, I don't know where I saw it, state auditor's office, something. But it's just something to kind of be aware of, and hopefully we could talk about that at some upcoming meeting, because I think it's important for our board to really understand what that means as we move forward. I don't think it's anything too scary or alarming, but just some knowledge and education of what that is. Levies, I know that we've been kind of tiptoeing around talking about levies and whatnot today, but elections matter. I think elections always matter. We don't have final results, but I really hope that we continue to build community trust so we can pass levies and bonds to support our schools, educators, and students. I tell every single one of my students, because I teach in a neighboring district, of course, that I voted in every single election since I turned 18. It didn't matter if it was just a school district one, presidential, school board. I voted in every election because I think it's important to be part of the democratic process, regardless of what you do, because elections really do matter. And so I hope that we can continue to work with our community and gain trust, and so we can pass bonds and levies, because we really need to support students. Because I really don't want us to be cutting things, because I think the students in the room will get really mad if we're like, well, we're going to cut all athletics, and they'll be like, what? We're not. We haven't decided that. We haven't decided anything. But I think that there will be some conversation like, well, Ms. G, no more plays for you. I think some Kent Ridge students would have some very strong opinions about that. So I think it's really important that we participate in democratic processes because elections do matter. speaking of Ms. G, I emailed Ms. G and was like, I want tickets to Kent Ridge. What do I need to do? I want to see the Hunchback. So I'm very excited. Opening night was tonight, but yet we're here, but that's fine. And I will find a day that's...
Many more.
There's many more happening this weekend, next week, but WASDA's next week, so we got to strategically find, you know what? I've been at school since 6 a.m. and we're having a late night and I'm still talking and I feel like it's a long day, but I really want to go see that show. So I'm gonna make it happen. Same with the Kentwood show. I really wanted to go see the play where something goes wrong because it just looks really good and I'm really excited about that. I also want to talk about, just really quickly, just the importance of going to schools as board directors. I know we've been doing that, going to games, going to events. Regardless of who sits in these seats, I think it's always important that this isn't an ivory tower over here that we're just sitting and making all these decisions. I think it's important that we go talk to students, we go talk to staff, go to the schools. Part of being a teacher in my real job, it's really hard to go to schools during the day. And so that's always been kind of my challenge being a board director, is being able to go and do that, because apparently I don't get release time according to my contract to go do that. So, because I'm not a state legislator, so I don't get leave time to do it. So anyway, but it makes it really challenging to be able to do this. Second job, that's only twice a month, which is not, it's a lot of days. I'm presenting at the WASDA conference next week, next Friday morning. I'm presenting a session on how to support LGBTQ+ students in your classes and districts. I'm going to talk about the importance of board policies and making sure that students feel safe regardless of their gender or sexual orientation in classes. I'm very excited to present this session again. I presented it last year. And I'm really just excited to do this again. It's be kind of like my final hurrah as a board director, I feel. Because technically, oh wait, one more thing. So I'm still hoping that Canyon Ridge field will be done, but with all this rain, I don't think it's gonna be. So I'm kind of disappointed that I think that's gonna go beyond my final board meeting here. But I might creep around. Hopefully you guys don't arrest me, but I want to kind of go see it at some point, or I'll go ask someone to show me because I'm really excited to see it. Because like as I was looking at my calendar, I was like, wow, today is my last kind of full regular board meeting. Like we have some work sessions and whatever, but the December meeting, it's a little hello, goodbye, and then I'm out. So I was thinking about that. I don't have a big old speech or anything planned, but I'm planning on saying some final remarks in December before I leave, because my term is over and I did not run again. So new people will be coming in place, or a new person will come in my position. So I'll have a nice little goodbye for y'all next time, for whatever that looks like. So I'm looking forward to just being a regular high school teacher without having a second job that doesn't pay well. So, but as I think about Thanksgiving and things moving forward, there's a lot to be thankful for, and I'm really thankful for my colleagues and the work that we do, and some other things. My husband and everything, for putting up with me as I do all this. But I'm very glad that we've had this time, and I look forward to our next meetings and my final board meeting in December. So looking at the clock, I will stop. It is 8:04, and I am going to call this meeting, or I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you all for coming.